Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Community Centre on the island of North Ronaldsay, where we are in the games room, and we have with us Sam Bullen to do the knitting workshop using the kit, the Stane scarf. Good morning and welcome to the
Hello everybody, I'd like to welcome you to the Stane scarf workshop. Excuse me. I'll just show you briefly, this is the kit here. And in the kit you have your knitting needles, your wool, your pattern and full instructions. And this is what we're actually going to be knitting today. You can see at the bottom here of the pattern, we've got the Stane represented with a little hole in the middle of it to show the hole in the stone, and the rest of the kit is a representation of actually the sheep dyke. You can see that up the pattern there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you right through the pattern and show you exactly how to knit it. So if you've never knitted before, then you will be able to knit this scarf once you've watched the full workshop. Now, firstly, if you take your wool and you find the center of the ball and you start knitting from the center, if you just pull that out, that means that you don't have the wool all rolling around on the floor and getting out of place for you.
Right, Sam, we should maybe all get our kits ready.
Yeah.
And we've just had Darryl join us.
While they're getting their kits ready, I'll just explain about the pattern here. We have written instructions, and we also have some charts here. If you're a more experienced knitter, you might find it easier to work with the charts, but if you're a newcomer to knitting, then I would suggest that you work with the actual written pattern. Okay, so first of all, we need to cast on. So if you take your wool, and I would suggest that you take roughly about 1 meter of the wool out, and you start, because as we cast on, we're going to use up some of this wool as well as the wool from the ball. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to make a loop with your thumb.
Oh, can you do that again?
I will,
please,
I will certainly. I will do that again. So I'm holding it like this.
Okay.
Wrap the wool around your thumb like that.
Yeah.
And then just create a loop onto your finger. I'll do that again for you. Okay, and then we've just placed that on our needle. And we do it again. You wrap it around your thumb, put your needle in, wrap your wool around your needle, and then pull it. Don't pull it too tight. You don't want this cast on to be too tight.
I think you're probably dealing with an extremely remedial group here. Okay.
Well, I'll just keep doing it. We've
Right.
got 44 stitches to cast on, so do it again. So again, if you put your thumb in, if you're just holding your yarn here in your left hand, put your thumb in, wrap the wool around your thumb, put your needle into the loop, yarn around, and take the loop off with your thumb. How are you getting on? Are you managing?
Not.
I don't actually know what.
No, I think I'm having to start again. I'm really sorry. We're pathetic.
It is difficult if you're not.
Very important to get it exactly right.
You need to have your loops so that they're attached and they are loops.
I think I need to watch this because it's hard to see from that angle.
So
Yeah, because we're sort of doing it back to front from you. But we're watching on a screen as well and see if we can figure it out.
would it be easier if you came and stood behind me to watch this?
We've got the camera that's behind you. We've got that on a screen
Right,
here.
okay.
So it's sort of the same thing in effect. Yeah.
So if you take the wool in your left hand,
Yeah.
put your thumb round and just wrap the wool round your thumb. You need to have a longer tail than that to get enough. Yeah, there you go. That's it. Put your needle into the loop. The other piece of yarn that's coming from the ball, you wrap that round the needle. And then you take the loop off the needle with your thumb.
Really hopeless at this.
And then you do it all over again.
Oh. Like that, basically.
As long as it's a proper loop and it's not. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Okay. Looks like it from here.
I'm sort of getting these weird loops underneath my loops.
Okay, you just need to tighten that a little bit more.
Right. While we're being really pathetic, Sam, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
What would you like to know?
Can I just quickly ask
No.
that, which side are we then working from? Are we working from this loose edge or from
You're working from the ball, so that's where your main knitting's going to be.
Okay.
But you need this tail here to do your cast on stitches from.
Okay. So is this the way that you have it under your arm?
I find it easier, but not everybody knits with one needle under their arm. But I just find it means that I can work my hands around the needle then. I'm not having to think about balancing the needle as well.
Yeah.
Who taught you to knit?
My mother. My mother taught me to knit when I was, I don't know how old I would have been. Probably about 5 or 6, because then when we were at school, we did some knitting and I already knew how to do it.
Right.
Can I ask, sorry, so this loose end is on the top. Is that right?
It's, if you look at it from this point of view, you have your needle in the middle, you've got your loose end to the left and your ball of wool to the right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you keep your ball of wool bit always in your right hand and the tail always in your left hand. Okay. And then I do it so automatically that it's difficult to think of all the stages.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But what I do is I'm just realizing I wrap the wool around my third finger so that I've got a tight bit of wool there. Just right round.
Yeah.
And then it's easy for me to put my thumb in and make a loop round my thumb.
And then, can I ask, does that not mean you're using this loose end?
Yeah, you're using your loose end to create your loops and you're knitting with the bit of wool from your ball.
Okay, so how, I'm sorry, I'm such an amateur.
It's okay.
Is this the knitting that we're doing, or is this kind of like a...
No, this is what you have to do to get your stitches on to knit your scarf. Okay. You have to cast on.
So this is enough to do all the loops, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
oh God, we should be making the loops from this end here. God. I'd be catching the loops from the ball. I should be catching it from this end.
You make your loop with
your thumb.
Your thumb on the tail end. And you knit with,
right.
the wool end. Sorry, that's me probably not explaining that very
No,
carefully.
it's moving hopeless. Got a question from Swain. Do left-handed people use the opposite hands for knitting than right-handed people?
That's a difficult question because it depends whether they've taught themselves to knit or not.
Right.
Usually, left-handed people, if they're shown how to knit, will knit right-handed.
Yeah.
But if they figured it out themselves, then they quite often knit left-handed.
Mhm.
But it's a completely different skill, and I know somebody that does it, but I don't know how they do it because their stitches will all be different because they're knitting the other way around. So not to overcomplicate it now, but when you're knitting, the loops that you knit go to the right-hand side of your work.
Mhm.
When you're doing a purl stitch, the bumps go to the left-hand side of your work. So a left-handed knitter is going to have that almost back to front.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go through it again?
It was just the same at the weaving workshop. We were all sort of hopeless to begin with, and then suddenly, yeah, and I was thinking, how on earth is it going to work? We're useless, and then it all suddenly did work. Yeah. I've had to unravel mine 3 times.
You
and I'm
could
doing
actually that you're missing out a stage there, but what you're doing still will work.
Okay.
It just means that when you actually come to knit, it might be a little bit looser.
Okay.
But yeah.
So what am I missing?
You're missing actually, you're creating the loop with your thumb, and then you need to put your needle through that loop and actually put the yarn over your needle and off so that you've knitted it on. I've not been pulling this tight enough, so I'm going to have to take mine back a little bit.
I wonder, would it help if James just kind of came and sat by you for a moment?
Yeah,
if we just put a chair. Yeah.
No, but
James, suddenly it just clicked for me. I suddenly could do it.
The thing is that you're seeing it from the right angle, so it's at a delay, so I'm not getting
Yeah. Okay. Right.
And at the end of the day, you know, knitting is a skill. It's learned.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as easy as right.
Benji, how are you getting on?
I think I got it from you, but I just
Yeah.
checking.
Right.
So you've got your length at the side. If you wrap around your thumb finger like that, and then hold on to it there.
Yeah.
Right. Put your thumb in.
Yeah.
Wrap it round.
Yeah.
Put your needle in.
Yeah.
So I'm getting it wrong now. Needle in. Wool over your needle.
So
and off.
where's the wool over the needle?
Sorry, you've got your loop to start with. And then wrapping this round. Thumb in. Needle in.
Yeah.
Wool over.
Okay, so
and loop off.
This part of the wool goes like that.
Other way round.
Okay.
That's it.
Mm.
No. Tell you what, make your loop first.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So you've got it there.
Yeah.
Thumb in.
Mm.
Needle into your loop.
Yeah.
Yarn around the needle. Yeah.
This way?
Other way.
This way.
Yeah. And then take that loop off with your thumb. Just this bit here.
Yeah. It's just... Oh, I see.
Over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Like right?
Yeah. That's it.
That's it. Okay, so that's not.
So then, thumb in.
Yeah.
Needle into the loop. Yarn around the
So
needle.
this goes
That's it.
Anti-clockwise.
Yep. And then take your thumb off the end. That's it. You've got it. You've got it.
Okay.
It is. I think it's just. Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. It's just your tension.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's just getting your hands in a happy place. I think you might find it easier if you have your needle under your arm, just because it holds your needle straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can hold the yarn in both, and one in each hand. Then that's it. That's it. Then your yarn off over your thumb. That's it. Spot on. And if you just pull this one down, yeah, so that you've got there. It's don't pull it too tight, because if it's just twisting on you because it's a little bit tight.
Okay. What's a good? Is that a good distance?
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. If you watch what I'm doing here, when I put my needle in and I put my yarn round, and I'm pulling down the way rather than you're pulling this way. If you go down the way, then it'll give you a tighter knot here, but you still want it to be able to move quite freely on your needle.
So is this?
You're right. Everything you're doing is right.
I'd like it to be like a good fan product and not like a crap fan. Maybe that's what I asked.
Well, no, it's just practice. That's all it is. You're doing fine.
Okay. You're just what? Oh no, you're too fast.
Right.
Too fast for me to get it.
So your thumb in.
Yeah.
Needle in.
And you kind of got that
yarn
right
round.
that you're ready to do the loop.
And then just pull down. But don't pull it too tight. As I said, you want your loops to be moving quite freely along the needle.
This part here looks weird to me.
No, that's just exactly the same as mine. It's just a little bit tighter. I think so. Yeah, that's all it is.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely positive.
Okay.
It's just your tension is just slightly different from mine, but it's exactly the same.
Because it's not. I haven't pulled this part tight.
Yeah, I can sort that for you. There we go. There you go. No problem. Yeah, it's okay. So how are the rest of you getting on with your casting on? Doing okay?
Can I show you how I'm doing it? See if I'm doing it.
Certainly.
One like that.
Yes?
There.
Yes?
One like that.
Oh no, this end.
At this end.
This end is the one that you're knitting with.
So this end goes round. And then
That's all what you're doing here. This is correct. You're making your loop, and you're putting it in, but you're knitting with this end of the wool. So you're putting that round and taking it off.
Right.
So everything apart from the knitting bit's perfect. You've got the loops and everything sorted. It's so when you get all your cast on stitches on, you've actually got your end and your wool from your ball both at the same end of the knitting, so that when we start to actually knit, you're knitting in only with the wool from your ball. No problem. I think what I'm going to do, because everybody's having a little bit of difficulty with this, is wait until we've got all our stitches cast on before I go on to try and explain about the rest of it.
Actually, I do have a question for
Sure.
you. Okay, right. So we've got a question here. What is the widest thing you've ever knitted? Like, how many stitches have you cast on?
The biggest thing that I've ever knitted was a circular jumper.
Yeah.
For a man whose chest measurement was 62 inches.
Wow. How many stitches was that?
I can't remember now, but well over 300. And it was really heavy.
Yeah.
And I actually got to the stage by the time that I was up. It was a yoke jumper, and by the time I was up to the yoke, because I also had the sleeves as well, I actually almost had to knit it reclining so that the weight of it was all on my body, because there's just no way my shoulders could cope with the weight of wool.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, that was quite a mammoth feat. I'm glad to say he only wanted the one. I must admit, I don't think I would do it again. It was hard. It was hard going.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
You know, knitting a scarf is not going to affect your shoulders at all. But when you've got 3 or 4 kilos of wool, and you're trying to hold that all up on needles, it's quite tricky.
Yeah.
It's quite tricky. How are we getting on, boys? Yeah, you're doing fine. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I've got my 44 put on, cast on.
Excellent. I'll just speed through and put mine on.
We spent 3 hours just doing these 44, to be honest.
You will get quicker.
Yeah.
You will get quicker the more you do it.
Sorry, I'm not sure why this is
Twisting.
Yeah, what's happening there?
That's just a tension thing.
So what am I doing? I'm connecting to that on the left.
You're too tight. Yeah, that's all it is.
So I was trying to make it like nice and neat like yours, because otherwise
that's just practice. That's all it is. It's just practice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just when you're pulling it, you want it to be. You want to pull it, but you don't want it really tight. You want to have it quite loose. Okay, so just makes it easier to knit for you.
So is that okay?
Like that. Okay.
Okay. Right. So I guess you can be too loose.
You can be too loose. If I show you here, if you go too loose, then you just don't get a pretty edge because you've got gaps.
Yeah.
Is that going to matter with this though? You know, because the design is to put tassels on. Will that sort of hide where we've gone wrong with the casting on?
That's a good way of looking at it. But no, it will mask a lot of it. It's not like we're knitting a jumper here where the cast on edge has to be absolutely perfect.
That's just as well, because mine's really lumpy.
But also too, remember, like the North Ronaldsay wool, you will have bits of wool that are not spun quite as tight as other bits.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of part of the character of the scarf as well. So, you know, the end of the day, what do you want a scarf to be? You want it to be warm.
Yes.
It's not, we're not knitting with, you know, like a 2-ply lace weight cobweb wool that has to be, you know.
Yes, yeah.
2,
Ooh.
4, 6, 8,
When you
10.
finish, I'm going to ask you a question.
I'm going way mad here.
You done more than 40?
Yeah. I'm way up to 60. Got carried away. Can't count now either. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. 44. There's my 44. Right, what were you going to ask me?
Knitting needle sizes.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work? How does all that work? This, I mean, I can see this one's got millimeters on, but sometimes you sort of see they haven't got. Is it all? Are they always talking about? But how does it work with the sizing of needles?
Right, now you would only be able to buy needles here with millimeters on them.
Yeah.
But they used to have, I don't know what they actually called it, different sizes of needles.
Yeah.
Where they were like 7s, 8s, 9s,
Yeah,
10s,
yes.
11s.
Yeah.
That's just like the old standard size. And now you can still buy, if you buy a needle sizer, it will have both sizes on it.
I see, yeah.
So it'll tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, your needle size relates to the thickness of the wool that you're knitting with.
Oh, okay. So how does this 5.5 millimeter relate to the wool?
If I was knitting a jumper with this wool, then I would be knitting probably on a 4 millimeter needle, because I'm quite a loose knitter anyway.
And because that's how you. So say this wool looks like it's maybe 2 millimeters across. Is that what you mean?
No, it's just purely the thickness of it and the ply of it. It does get quite complicated, because not all, like, you know, if you've maybe heard people speaking about a 4-ply wool, that you would knit baby clothes with, or you would knit 4 plies, kind of like what Shetland wool would be if you were knitting with Shetland wool. But all 4-ply means is it's 4 strands of wool that are plied together.
Yes.
So depending on how thick those plies are, depends on how thick the wool you get. If you had one of these plies, would be thicker than what a 4-ply is normally.
I see. So so we're knitting with 3-ply wool here, aren't we?
Yeah.
And was this spun at the wool in North Ronaldsay?
Yes. This is
yeah,
proper North Ronaldsay wool. But if you split the wool here, can you see?
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 strands there. But those 3 strands for the bit that I've actually split there are not actually the same thickness.
I see, yes, yeah. Because
so it's
there's
just
variation in the wool.
It is. Yeah. And also because they've got a small spinning mill here.
Yeah.
From what I understand from speaking to the girls there, it depends very much on the humidity.
Yes.
When they're actually spinning, on how tight a spin they get.
Yes.
And sometimes they'll get like what we would call a slub. I'll just sauce them in here.
I think I've got a slub
like a thicker bit.
Like that there.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a proper slub for you. You can see that that's quite a bit thicker and isn't spun as tight. It actually looks more like what you would think of if you were to see a bit of wool hanging on a bit of barbed wire fence.
Yeah.
That's just unspun wool.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, I'm not an expert on spinning at all.
Yeah.
But it's to do with the humidity when they're actually spinning.
Yeah.
How tight they can get that. So generally speaking, the thicker the yarn you're working with, the more millimeters your knitting needle is.
And is it easier, do you think, is this a good size for beginners then?
Yes.
Like a five
It's far easier to knit with a thicker yarn than it is with a thinner yarn.
Yeah.
Just because it's easier to work with, but also too, it's less demoralizing, because if you're knitting with really small needles and really thin yarn, it takes so much longer to show any work.
Yeah.
How are we doing?
Are we up to 44 yet?
So to count them, how do you count? Just count these loops?
I just do twos.
Right.
So we
Benji's at
2,
40.
4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 6, 28, 32, 34, 36, 38. Another 4 and you're done.
Does that look a bit better?
Yeah,
It's
it's
a bit more
great.
neat.
You see, you are getting there. It is just practice. It's all it is. And if you've never done it before, it's quite amazing, really.
Yeah.
Oh, someone called Jacqueline's watching, and she says the slub is pretty. Oh no, yes, she's called Jacqueline. She's in California, USA.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness! Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Would the knitting needles be? They wouldn't be in millimeters in the States, then, would they?
No, they probably have. I'm not actually 100% sure on this, but probably their needles are more like our traditional standard
Yeah.
sizes.
Yes.
I think they probably work with, just from conversations
Yeah.
I've had with people coming in the shop, I
Yeah.
think that's the case.
Yeah.
But
Well, maybe if Jacqueline sort of could confirm the knitting, let us know about the knitting needle sizes in America. That'd be really interesting. Oh, she's said she's knitted her whole life.
and quite often they have completely different names for their thicknesses of yarn, which causes great confusion as well.
Yes, yes.
Because they'll come in and they'll ask me,
Yes.
what
Yeah.
weight the yarn is. And
Yeah.
then when I tell them that it's double knitting, they're like, they don't know what that
Yes.
is. I think they call it worsted weight.
Oh, right. Right. So Jacqueline's saying yes. They use both sides.
Oh, right,
both
okay.
sizes. And Swain's put a chart in the chat here, which I can see next to the YouTube on about knitting sizes. So if anyone wants to have a look on that on the needle size,
Yeah, sure.
that'll be showing up in the chat.
Okay.
Right. So she uses millimeters.
So as we're all finished now, are we ready to start?
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'd like to just sit here.
Sure.
Get
Yeah.
in on the knitting.
No problem. So for our first row, we're actually using this as the right side of the work, and it's a purl row. So if any of you haven't done purl stitches before, what you're doing is you're taking the yarn and you're holding it at the front of your work, and your knitting needle goes in to the front of the stitch.
Yeah.
And your yarn goes round the needle anti-clockwise.
Right.
And you take your needle out and you stitch it off.
Would it be okay if you explained just how these charts work?
I think it's too complicated when you're first starting, because your chart is a picture of your knitting. So if you look at the chart there, you can see the dots on here marry up with the bumps on the knitting.
Yeah.
The thing that I think you might find too complicated about using the chart is when you're reading this chart here, the first row, the purl stitches, I'll show you in a minute what I mean by the bumps, but it's showing the bumps there. But then when you get on to row 3, you've got some knit stitches, but it depends on what side of your work you're working from, whether that's a knit or a purl stitch.
Okay.
I think it would confuse things for you to use the chart at the moment.
So what do you recommend for a beginner?
I think you go with the knitting instructions,
Okay.
which are the actual written instructions rather than the other chart. You should have the.
Is this the laminated?
Oh,
yeah, on the back of the laminate.
Oh, I see. Okay. You have one.
You can use mine if you want.
Okay, I have one here.
So we do an entire row in this
In the
pearl
purl.
stitch.
Yeah,
So pearl to the front.
sure.
So I go in
No, that's in it. You're going in that way.
that way.
Yeah. So
And then
you're
the
going
wool goes
in, and then you're going round that needle,
around this one
the one that you've put the stitch onto.
Okay.
So this one.
from the outside.
So in here,
Yeah.
round there.
Around there.
Yes, that's it. Then you take this needle back out and hold the stitch
So
through there. Yeah,
there
that's it. And then take that off.
and off of there.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's
Okay.
needle in, yarn around the needle and clockwise, needle back through the loop and off. You've got it. That's purl. When you're looking at this stitch here, you'll see that it makes a bump on the back of the stitch on this side.
So facing you, you can see bumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And once you've done a few more, that'll become even more apparent. I'll just show that to the camera there. You see these bumps here, and that's your purl stitches. And that's what we're wanting. If you see at the bottom of the scarf here, you've got these bumps on the knitting, and that's what you're looking to achieve for the bottom to give you a base for the scarf. Okay, so you need your yarn at towards you, nearest to you.
Yeah.
And you need your right hand needle to go in from right to left into the stitch. Yeah. And then you take your yarn, it's anti-clockwise round your right hand needle.
Over the top.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And then you take that needle back through the stitch. And off. I'm just gonna. No, it's okay. It's just, I think the angle that you're seeing that this art is not necessarily the same. So in there, yarn around that needle, down through there and off. So
Is it going to end up that all this stuff's off this needle?
yes.
Okay.
So you're basically, that's exactly what you're doing. You're transferring the stitches from this needle onto your right hand needle, from your left needle onto your right hand needle. Okay.
It's like do some magic on the middle. I'm not really-
Right. So needle goes in from right to left. Yeah. That's it. Then yarn goes around your right hand needle. That's it. Then pull this needle back through that loop. So just towards you, but you're catching the yarn that you've, this one.
Yeah.
And down through there.
Will this loop not come off?
Yeah. Watch.
So my wool just snapped. So you just tie a knot and brave on. Yeah.
It's probably the easiest
Right.
thing to do at the moment.
Okay.
Right. Through, round. If you hold this, as you're doing that stitch round, if you hold the wool down here, that means it's a little bit tighter on your needle.
Yeah.
And then if you pull this needle back, it's going down. It looks like it's going between those two stitches on your left hand needle, but you actually want it just to take that loop off there. So almost. You've just caught the back of the loop as well, so you actually want it there.
Okay.
And then that loop comes off.
Right. Okay.
Getting some lovely compliments.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. So Jacqueline saying your event is so nice, so beautiful, teaching someone to knit. Beautiful.
oh, that's so
Thank you so
sweet.
much. Isn't that lovely to think there's someone in California watching us?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it must be quite early there.
It must be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or late.
Oh, it's late. They're ahead of us, aren't they? Are they?
Behind.
No, they're behind us.
Behind.
So yeah.
Behind.
Yeah. So it must be late on. Yeah.
1 a.m. is when you're
Yeah.
saying.
Oh, right. She's having to go to bed. Yes. Good night, Jacqueline. He says, prayers and good day all. Oh, that's really nice. Well, you can catch up with us later, Jacqueline, because this will be recorded onto YouTube. I wonder how she found out about this.
I know, it's
Yeah.
incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's great. So, how are we doing?
Mm.
How are you getting on, Alex?
I'm okay. I've come across a bad cast on stitch. It's sort of incredibly tight. So just worm my needle in.
I don't think I understand it. Well, this, I guess I thought this had to be perfect, but actually you're redirecting it onto the other needle anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah. And the wonderful thing about knitting is that basically once you've finished it, you're the only one that really knows your mistakes.
Yes. Yeah. And I think this is quite a forgiving pattern, isn't it?
That's
doing.
what the kind of plan was when I
Yes.
was thinking about designing this.
Yes.
And because this wool does have a few slubs in it as well, then that hides things, because you will have some stitches that are bigger than others.
Just quickly explain this stage again. So you're
Yeah.
at this stage, you've got the loop.
Yeah, you go into the loop,
You
yarn
take the
round.
thongs out,
You're taking that needle
and then it's
back
going
through the loop.
Going this way
It's
or over the top.
no, it's in between there, so that all you're really doing is making a new loop, and then you have to take the loop off of that needle.
Well, she found us just by YouTubing knitting and live, and we showed up.
Oh wow!
Whoa.
That's even more incredible,
Isn't it? Isn't it?
Oh, she'll have to go and Google Earth us now to find out exactly where we are.
Yes. Oh, she'd like to watch us again. Oh, you can set a bell by subscribed. So she loves the natural look of it.
Well, it's fabulous in the North Ronaldsay wool. Some people do dye it, but I only ever work with the natural colours that it's split into.
It's sort of amazing, the colours. We're sort of doing, shall I put some of the different colours in front of you so people can see what we have? Do you want to sort of position
Certainly,
those?
yeah.
So if you can see.
This one is obviously the North Ronaldsay dark brown. And from what I understand happens, when they get the fleeces in, they just divide them up. So I think normally what we get from the North Ronaldsay mill is the brown, the fawn. This one is the light grey, and there's also a dark grey. And there's also a white.
Yes. And it's sort of amazing, you know, they're all the same breed of sheep, but there's this humongous variation
Huge.
in all
And-
the colours.
Yeah, and because it's hand sorted as well, then
Yeah.
one batch of dark grey will be completely different to another
Yes.
batch of dark grey.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's just whatever sheep they're shearing at the time
Yes. Yeah.
that gives them the colours.
Yeah.
But they're great. I obviously a lot of the white wool that's produced goes off for dyeing. People buy that to dye themselves. But as I say, when I'm knitting jumpers and everything, I don't use any of the dyed. I just use the natural colours.
Yeah. Jacqueline's asking, is the yarn soft? So you can maybe describe it. It's got the hairy bits in it.
It is quite soft. Some people still find it a little bit scratchy, but I have a little bit of a controversial tip for that.
Oh.
When I've knitted my jumpers and I wash them and I block them out just to stretch them to size, as soon as they are completely dry, they have to be completely dry, then I put them in the tumble dryer on low for 5 minutes.
Right.
And it just takes the last of the guard hairs out, which are the ones that are particularly itchy. There is still some guard hairs left in this, but there really isn't that many. But it just, in fact, I'm finding it really difficult to find any in there. But yeah, they're the ones that people find the most itchiest. And they're the harder hairs. And that's what I do. And it makes a huge difference to the jumpers.
Yeah.
But I do stress they have to be completely dry, because if you try and do that with a wet jumper, you will just end up with shrunken, horrible lump.
Right. Oh, that's
It
really
will
good
just
tip.
felt it, basically.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I haven't made much progress since the last time we spoke. I tried to do one and then I messed it up and then I pulled it off and now I've got this.
Okay. That's probably just a drop stitch. 2,
So
4,
that's what I got
6. Just double count and make sure.
I don't know, I think it just came.
2, 4, 6, 8. Yes, just a drop stitch. So are you finding it harder than you thought it would be?
It's really difficult.
I mean,
like
it's.
like trying to get them to do what you want is really difficult.
I think, if you don't mind,
I don't know.
I will purl this row for you,
Okay.
because hopefully by doing that,
Yeah.
we will give you an easier, softer row to start with.
Okay. That sounds good.
And it might just be a little bit easier for you.
Yeah.
2, 4, 6, 8.
Benji, are you on to the next row?
It's finished.
You've
one row,
well, yes, yeah.
but it has 45.
Whoa. Okie dokie. We'll sort that for you in a minute.
It's good that we're sort of making all these mistakes.
Yeah,
It'd be terrible if we were all sitting here racing through this pattern and not
Yeah.
saying anything.
absolutely. And the one thing that I did think about after I actually put the kits together was that if anybody wanted to knit this but didn't want the extra complication of knitting the representation of the Stane, then they could just knit the wall pattern.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, to me, it doesn't feel like it's a huge complication, but
Yeah.
then I've been knitting for a long, long time.
I have found a weird stitch right in the middle.
Right?
That's just where you want a weird stitch.
At least it's not right at the other end.
Oh, yeah.
It's all sortable.
Swain suggested that the kits should be supplied with 44 stitches already cast onto a needle. Absolute beginners.
It's just like a kit, it's just like a finished scarf.
Yes.
Or just a scarf.
I'm feeling like I'm losing a bit of faith in my ability, but I think if I push through it, I'll feel good about it.
This is exactly what the weaving workshop was like, wasn't it, Benji? The weaving one was chaos at
It was
first.
like,
Yeah.
It was low point, and then
Yeah,
you start
that's
to
right.
get it.
You've sort of got to work through all the emotions to really appreciate it. If this was easy, it'd be nothing.
I think my scarf would be softened by my tears. Frustration.
Jacqueline said that when she was teaching her son to knit, he said it hurt so much, hurt his back so much he could hardly stand it.
Well, do you drive?
I don't have a license, but I'm currently learning.
Yeah. So the first time you got in a car,
No,
you know,
yeah.
it's and I'm not going to suggest that knitting is like driving, but it is from the point of view that you've got two hands, two needles.
Yeah.
You know, you've got more than one thing to think about at one time. So it just does take a little bit of time. But once you've got it, and the other thing about knitting too is your tension. And it takes a little bit of time to figure out what's all happening and making sure that that's right. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 44. There we go. Right. This is when we're going to complicate it a bit for you. Do you want me to sort yours out as well before we carry on?
I definitely need it to be more complicated.
But most people find knitting, the knit stitch, easier than the purl stitch.
I think it's there-ish.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Once you get the different types of stitches down, that's like bread and butter of knitting.
Absolutely. There's really, really, really complicated knitting patterns, but at the end of the day, you have a knit stitch and you have a purl stitch. And then all the complications get added on to the top of that. So, you know, that once you've got those two basics, you can actually knit anything. There we go. That's it. Yeah, that's it, spot on. All it was he hadn't completely taken that stitch off, so it was too thin, so it's done. So fine.
Thank you.
Okay, right. So now we're knitting, looking at the wrong side of our work, and we want another row of these bumps along the right side. So now we need to do a knit row rather than a purl row. And knit rows, you put, this one's maybe slightly easier to see because you put your needle in from the left-hand side of the stitch to the right-hand side of the stitch with your wool in your right hand. So it's the kind of the opposite from what you did before. And the needle goes round, and the wool goes round the needle anti-clockwise again. And you pull the stitch up towards you through the loop and the loop off. So it's going in, around, up through the stitch and off. And what that does again is it knit stitch, so it gives you a bump on the back of your work, or the side of your work that's away from you.
I'm just going to stand behind you, Sam. So
Sure.
watch that happening.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So it's going in. See, I've gone and got a funny stitch there now too. You're going in underneath, wool around, needle up through the stitch and off.
So it's the same except for the direction you put the needle in.
Yeah, basically. You've got the wool on the other side. Instead of having it nearest to you on top of the needle, your wool's on the other side. But the way that I look at it, if you put your needle in for a knit stitch, you're kind of making a K. Do you see that? You've got a K, so you're going knit. If you think about that as the legs of your K, you've got a knit stitch. It goes round and your needle up through and that stitch off.
Can I ask, like when you pull the last bit off, do you have like a good way to kind of get this bit off that doesn't feel like you're, because like before I had it here and then I was trying to push it with my finger. Does it just need to be closer to the top of the needle?
Yeah. That's exactly it. That's it.
That's-
Most people find knitting slightly easier than puddle stitches for some reason.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure why.
So
But
when you're at this stage, then which you're pulling it tight like this.
no, you don't need to pull it too tight.
Okay.
Yours is quite tight anyway.
Okay.
So needle in there.
Yeah.
That's it.
This thing. Okay.
Other way round. So it's anti-clockwise.
Is there not anti-clockwise?
No, it's clockwise, is it? Oh, that way. Anyway. So that
Okay.
your lump's
isn't
going to be
clockwise.
there.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I did it wrong. Yeah.
And then,
So I actually did it. I did it wrong the first time.
don't worry. It won't make that much difference, but it's,
Pull that. And that-
Yeah.
You see like here where it's kind of like.
I would just squish your knitting up a little
All the way
bit
to the
towards
top.
the end of the needle.
Okay.
You don't want it too close. You don't want to pull more than one stitch off.
Right.
But that's it. That's it. And off. How are we doing? Is everybody finding that easier? For some reason, I've never quite figured it out, but yeah. My niece taught herself to knit on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
when she was in Spain for a year.
Mm-hmm.
But when she was little, I tried to teach her to knit,
Yeah.
and she automatically started knitting puddle, and I'd never come across that before. And she found it really difficult to do knit stitches, but puddle came naturally to her, where most people find the actual knit stitch easier.
It does seem easier, but I'm also just getting to grips with.
Maybe it's something about the way that you're actually taking it off the needle that it seems easier.
Yeah, it does seem easier. Okay, kind of tightness or is it?
Yeah, I think you're probably quite tight. So
Too tight?
well, don't worry too much, but just don't tighten it anymore. You like if you want it to be quite loose so it moves loosely, it's easier as well if it's looser on your needles. But see you're asking about that. I actually knit with all the needles, all the stitches in my hand.
Okay.
I've just realised
Yeah,
I do that. And then it's easier for me just to push it up. But this is years of knitting. It's
Yeah, just something conscious.
Can you sort of sit in front of the television knitting?
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I knit jumpers to order through the shop,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and so I never ever have a stock because they're all knitted to
I
size.
see. Right.
But you know, I can have. I think the most I've had is 60 orders to do for a year. Now,
How long does it take you to do each jumper then?
well, what I do, partly because it reduces the cost for people,
Yeah.
and partly because of the time it takes, is I have a chunky knitting machine.
Oh,
So I knit
yes.
up to the underarms on the machine.
Yes.
And then if it's a yoke jumper, I hand knit the yoke.
Oh, I see. That's
Or
clever. Yeah.
with the North Ronaldsay ones, these aren't yoke jumpers that I normally knit with them, but I hand knit an embossed pattern. It's the easiest way to describe it. I don't
Yes.
find that it works really terribly well for colour work because there's not, you can see with these two colours, there's not really enough of a difference to show up.
Yeah.
I have done one cardigan that had dark brown and cream because
Yeah.
there was enough of a distinction between the colours then for that to work.
Yeah.
But mostly it's puddle stitches to give a pattern that I'm doing. And so that's all hand knitted. And it's approximately 25 hours of hand knitting.
Wow.
So, you know, when you're working full time, then most of my knitting happens in front of the TV.
Yes. Yes.
Something funny there. I know I kind of messed up that last stitch, but then
No, all it is you've just not knitted that last stitch.
oh maybe
So that's it.
okay.
Would the North Ronaldsay wool be okay in a knitting machine because of the sort of the slubbing and things? Does that matter?
It's okay on the chunky.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to knit with it on a standard machine. I tried doing a lacy scarf in the thinner North Ronaldsay 2-ply wool
Yeah.
on my standard gauge machine, and
Yeah.
it just didn't work.
Yeah.
It's too fluffy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the yarn weight, the 3-ply works fine. As long as you've got a chunky machine.
So in my dream world, I make a an Icelandic style sweater that got that lovely design. What size needles would you use for something like that? And what size wool?
Well, there's 2 weights of Icelandic that I work with.
Yeah.
There's what everybody kind of knows as the normal loppy.
Yeah.
And it's thicker than this.
Right. Yeah.
Than this wool. And I normally knit that with a 6mm needle.
Right. Right.
Then there's the half weight called the light loppy, which I suppose is like light loppy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a 4mm needle.
Yeah.
It's a more drapier fabric, like women tend to prefer it,
right.
whereas men wear the loppies as an outside
I
garment.
see,
You know,
yes.
it's more like their jumpers, their coat.
Do you think North Ronaldsay wool would work for an Icelandic types jumper?
Well, it will.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. There isn't anything to say that you can't knit any jumper with any wool.
Yes,
It's just
yeah.
number of stitches and pattern.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could do a yoke with North Ronaldsay wool,
Yeah, I
no
think
problem.
because you could get the contrast by using, pulling that dark one in.
It's. I wonder. I don't have my iPad with me today.
Yeah.
But if you remind me on later on,
Yeah.
then I'll have a look on my phone, or I can email you the
yes,
pictures
please.
of the.
Oh yeah.
I knitted a cardigan.
Yeah.
For an American lady.
Yeah.
That I used the dark brown and the cream.
Oh, that would look nice.
And did
yeah.
Well, it was a yoke pattern, but it was a cardigan.
Yeah.
And so you can see, and did little Stane stains all the way around it.
My daughter's got a sweater she bought in Iceland, and she's never washed it, and it seems to still be quite water repellent. Is that something specific to the Icelandic wool? Do you think?
Well,
it would get
actually,
the same effect?
you know that there was a study done, I can't remember the years, but it was a study done a few years ago where they compared the North Ronaldsay sheep, the Icelandic sheep,
Yeah.
and some sheep bones that they found at Scarabray,
Yeah.
and genetically they are no different.
Really? Yes. Yeah.
Because you know it's a rare
primitive-
ancient breed.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's one of the selling points of my jumpers is I only knit with island community wools.
Yes.
So there's
Yes.
Icelandic or North
Yeah.
Ronaldsay, could be Shetland, never managed to get into that yet. 'Cause
Yes,
it's
yes.
too many orders. But
Yeah.
The wool's very similar,
Right.
but it
yeah.
feels quite different because the Icelandic is so processed.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
it's a massive industry
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
You know, they are making lots and lots of wool.
Yeah. Yeah.
To the extent that their main distribution point isn't actually Iceland, it's in Denmark.
Oh, is it?
So if
Really?
I'm ordering wool, I get it from a supplier in
Yes.
Denmark.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think Iceland only deal with orders over 100 kilos.
Oh, right.
You know, it's massive.
Yes. Yes.
It's massive.
Yeah.
But of course, you do have all the colour range and everything.
Yeah.
But the actual wool's very similar.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. Right. So I've done my next. I've done
Okay.
row 2. God, row 3. What's happening here? All right. I sort of.
Well, this is
Right.
where it does get a little bit more complicated.
Is that the
because
pattern? Is that the pattern starting that?
It is indeed.
Right. It's just like reading HTML, isn't it?
My husband likes to, when
Yeah.
he's got some pals in, pick
Yeah.
up one of my knitting patterns
Yes, yeah.
and completely take the mickey.
Oh, really?
Because he's like, what language is this? But it is quite straightforward once you understand what
Yes,
you're doing, like
yeah.
everything else.
Yeah. Have all the men done row 2 yet?
We're just nearly getting there.
No
Right.
way.
Does anyone need a drink? Something to drink?
Water,
Do you guys want anything to drink? Would it be terrible if I said, "Can I have a coffee, please"?
It would not be terrible.
Thank
at all.
you. Thank you so much.
Sam, I assume you're okay with
I'm
water?
okay. Yes, thank you at the moment. Yeah.
Thanks. Swain says he's put a link to your work from
Oh.
your shop on the Island to Island website.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you, Swain.
Although the pictures on there are not the best at the moment, but they
Uh-huh.
will be shortly. Okay.
I think it looks more like assembly.
Assembly,
Well,
right?
How much nearer are you going to want at the end?
But we shouldn't be phased by this, should we? It's just logical.
It seems to
Yeah.
not- Sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it's
You've got your wool on the wrong side of the needle.
okay. Put that back on.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one needs to be on that side of the needle.
Okay.
So you've missed knit in that stitch,
Right.
but that's okay. We can just sort that out quite easily. There you go.
Yeah, you see where row 5 says repeat row, that should be go to, shouldn't it? Go to 3.
What I was going to suggest to you is
So
always have a pen with you.
pen, yes.
And if you, if you want to hold on to your pattern, then photocopy it so that you've got one that you can write on and mark on.
Always score off where you're up to with it.
I mean, if you've got, those ones are laminated, but if you've got a non-permanent marker, you could
Yes,
use that
that's a
and
good
wipe it
idea.
off, which is one of the reasons I did that, because quite a lot of people like to do that now.
Oh, that's a good idea.
But just while we're waiting, if I can just show you that what you should have now is this is your right side of your work as you're looking into it, going into row 3, and you should have rows with bumps looking towards you. And that means you've done one row purl, which brought that first row of bumps, and the second row was a knit row, and that's given you the bumps because you've been knitting from the wrong side. And if we turn that over, then you can see it's called stocking stitch when you do 1 row plain, 1 row purl. And if you can see on the other side, your knitting's completely flat. But on the side we're using as our main side, it's the bumps. I've not come up with a better way of describing it yet, but bumps.
Yeah.
How are we doing? A few stitches to go.
Yeah.
Right, I think I said earlier that there's nothing in this pattern that's more complicated than knitting and purling. And row 1 was all purl, row 2 was all knit.
Yeah.
Row 3 is a mixture of both. So if I just read that along for you, it says K16, so that is as simple as knit 16 stitches.
Right.
Then purl 2 stitches, knit 8, purl 2, knit 16.
Okay.
Now, some people like to mark where the pattern is. So if you want to mark the pattern so that you know where you are, then when we're going along here, the knit 16 is the part of the pattern on the scarf that is the wall pattern. Then these stitches are the standstone in the middle, which is the purl 2, knit 8, purl 2, and these last 16 is the wall pattern again. If that makes sense. Now, you have an option at this point. You can use commercially bought stitch markers if you want to use them. And these come in different forms. You can get little circles that you just slip onto your needle, and you slip that as you're knitting along. You just put it onto your other needle as you go in. Or there's little ones like this that are little hooks that you can again slip onto your needle and slip across. If you don't have that, then you can use any bit of coloured wool, a bit of ribbon, a bit of string, anything that you've got that you can mark your stitches. Again, you just tie it on and it just gives you a little reminder of where you are in your pattern.
Please, can you snip us some bits of that green? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure.
We haven't got any
Yeah,
scissors.
surely. Excuse me.
Do you have some scissors?
I do. Just
Thanks.
pull it, it'll break.
Oh, right.
That's actually let loppy wool. So that just shows you how different the loppy wool is to the...
Oh, yes. So how many, do we need 2 markers?
Just 2 if you want them, yeah.
Right.
That's
There you go, Benji.
why, if I'm doing something wrong here that's making this part so tight, or is it just that this on the left side is just very tight?
It's just when you first learn it, everybody does this. It's just finding your tension.
Yeah, see, I haven't been able to have so much extra needle strand. It feels very like tight in.
Yeah, that it's just practice. That is just practice.
Since I'm not sure what part of it you're in control of, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's why I like to have a needle under my arm.
Yes, it doesn't.
Because
it
it's constant.
doesn't sit that well.
It's maybe not quite long enough for you. Do you want to try my needle?
Oh, is that one the needle?
Yeah. You try that one under your arm and see if that helps. Or do you still find that
It feels
difficult?
very awkward.
Some people don't. Some people just knit like this.
Yeah, I think that I just doesn't feel like it's gonna work. It feels very,
Yeah. That's okay.
I don't know, like a dinosaur or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So how to convey that to people listening.
No, it's I think you've just got to find what works for you, and everybody is different. I think if you see old film of Shetland knitters, they have a leather, I don't know what the real name for it is, but it's a leather belt, and at the front of it, it's usually like an elongated oval. That's the only way I can think to describe it. And it's got holes all over the front of it. And their needles are double pointed, so they don't have an end on the needle, and they actually stick their needle in the belt.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, and they knit like that. And there's a really, really wonderful bit of old film where they're actually out herding sheep, and the women are all knitting as they're herding because they've got the needles poked into their belts and they're just knitting, walking along as they're doing other things. And it's another skill set completely. That, I mean, I don't think I would be able to walk up the road knitting like that, but they do it, or did it.
Okay.
Okay, so row 3. We're on knit 16. So that's just the same as what you did last row, but 16 stitches.
So how do you have a good way of keeping track, or you just count them as you go? Like you just count the right needle.
Well, what I would do is I count as I'm knitting, and then just because I find it easier, is I'll slip a stitch marker on.
Okay.
So I have stitch markers here. If you want to try stitch markers, then you can.
So just kind of.
It's just easy. If I show you here, I'm just going 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 15, 16. And that's me actually knitting quite slowly.
Are you sure?
But that's just because, it's just practice. So then you just slip your stitch marker on if you're doing it, or as I said, anything that you want. And then according to the pattern, the next one is purl 2. So that's when you have to remember to take your wool from the right hand side of your needle to the left hand side of your needle, and go back to putting your needle back in to do your 2 purl stitches, which again gives you your bumps at the front here. And then we have knit 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Do you have to do anything when you've got the plain needle? Do you have to do anything to start that off, or do you just go straight in?
Straight in.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Robert. Get lost.
That's it. And then last knit 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. Obviously done something wrong, have I? 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 2, 2. Been chatting too much.
So I've very distracted you.
How are you getting on with your stitch markers? Are you finding it
Right.
easier?
Well, I've just done row 3.
Yeah.
No, we're not on row 4 yet, are we?
Nope,
No,
not yet.
right.
I've already done row 3.
Well, I have knitted before though, so it's pathetic how slow I am.
Yeah.
There's a reason to work this tight on the loser.
Oh.
It's all right. Don't worry.
So we've got 2
Yeah,
problems in the
sure.
room. Like so
James's
James's needle thread has come off
faster.
the needle, and Benji's trying to undo what he's done.
Just 2 stitches.
can do that. Do that one next week.
We're starting up a craft group.
There we go.
Sam. So I think maybe we're starting a craft group up. So I think maybe we should do, because there's some good knitters on the island. I think we need to pull them down and get us better with our knitting.
Well, have you seen? I don't know if you've been watching the Olympics, but so
the
bad with
boy.
names. Yeah, the diver,
Tom Daly. Yes.
He was. There was a couple of pictures of him knitting at this weighting in competition because he just finds it de-stresses him.
James, how are you finding knitting and stress?
I think if it wasn't being recorded, I feel like I'm holding everything back. That's the thing.
No,
don't worry
it's
about
really
that.
useful actually, because there'll be people struggling watching it, you see. So it's not a problem at all. People can always fast forward.
And also too, I mean, it's the whole point of the workshop is to give people a chance to learn to knit. If they want to do it. It's
well, absolutely. There's no point teaching people how to knit, how to do this, is there?
No, and it's, you know, if we were going to do a really complicated pattern, then that would be a different workshop.
That's right.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Just kind of
I think.
feel like I'm somehow remembering this.
I'm just feeling like working to the very end of the needle.
Yeah, so coming back a bit. Yeah. I'm just going to take my mic off so I can chew on digestive
Find
biscuits.
the next row for you, so that it's a bit looser. You might find it easier again.
Yeah.
So we are doing 16. 1, 2,
Yeah.
3.
So just like you have so much like maybe it's every time too tight.
It's a little bit tight, but it's not as bad as you think it is.
Okay, maybe I'm just not, I don't know how to.
No, thank you. The idea of me crunching.
Something happened.
I was just figuring out how to use the mute on the mic to stop the crunching.
6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17. 16. Do you want me to put markers on for you? I think you might find it helpful.
Yeah. So do you take them off after you've done the right?
You transfer them onto the needle as you're knitting, and then it always lets you know where you are.
Okay.
I've got a message here saying this accessory may not be supported.
What's happened now?
2, 6, 8. Lost my.
Is it still coming? Is it still coming through on there? Oh, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
It says we've got 3 people watching,
Wow.
but the me, Stane, and someone else.
Hmm.
Oh, and you.
But there will be many people who watch it at the latest.
Well, absolutely.
Right, okay. So that's your third row.
Mhm.
And
You put the markers after it's knitted.
so basically the markers are here. So that you know which part of your pattern
you
is
finished
the wall
the row?
pattern.
Okay.
and which part of it is the Stane representation part.
Right.
It's maybe easier to see that on the chart than what it is on the instructions.
Yeah.
But it just gives you the opportunity when you're reading off of there, then you can see which part of the pattern you're knitting. You don't have to use markers, you can just read it off there, but I find it easier if I look down and I knit a few stitches and then I think, oh, where am I? Then, you know, I can just find it easier. How are we doing?
Oh, really good. Oh, I see. So on the instruction, it says follow chart 1. So we could have either been doing that thing with a bunch of dots on that's a grid, or reading this laminated
It's the
sheet.
same. It's the same pattern. It's just until you understand when you're looking what side's the right side and the wrong side of your work.
Yes.
I think it's quite confusing to think, and I'm aware that I can think in 3D.
Yes.
Because I've done it for so long.
Yeah.
Not everybody can.
Yeah.
So when you're reading the knitting chart, then you start at row 1 on the right hand side of the chart, because that's you knitting along that row.
Right.
So it's showing as bumps because that's
the dots. The
for
dots
the puddles.
represent bumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your dots along there is all your puddle rows.
Yeah.
And then your next row along is actually a knit row, which you would think on the chart would show as smooth, but you're looking at the chart from the front of the pattern.
Right, I get you.
So it's in reverse. You are
Right.
knitting, but you're putting the bumps
you're
on the right
forcing
side
that,
of your scarf.
Yeah.
And that's why it's quite, you need to know probably a little bit more about what you're knitting to understand that.
I see, yes. Yeah.
Because, you know, if I was saying to you at the moment to knit by bumps, I think you'd be completely confused.
I can't even knit a bump.
You can, you're doing fine.
Well, actually, I think I need to show me how to do
Yeah, that's okay.
I think I've got the knits down.
How you doing, Benji?
I don't know.
Go to YouTube and you'll want to monitor questions or whatever. Or
I'm trying to undo stuff. I
Okay.
made a mistake.
Well, do you want me to sort it? Or are you happy to do it
I
yourself?
think I figured out how to undo it.
Well, I think you're doing pretty well if you can take it back and sort it yourself. That's quite a leap in understanding as well. No, but it is. There's plenty of people that can knit that can't take back their own work and sort it out. So
you have had 11 different viewers.
all right, okay.
Dipped in and out.
My mum popped in for a while, I think.
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Did she see you getting a biscuit?
I don't know. She heard me confusedly asking questions. That's good.
I'll pull her up and have another biscuit while she's on. So she knows we're looking after you.
Actually, I'm not sure if she's still watching or not, but I'll happily take another biscuit. We started on row 4 yet?
We're just going to start on row 4. I was hoping that Benji would catch up, but he's nearly at the end of the row.
So when you switch from knit to purl, does it kind of look like a double stitch for me?
It shouldn't do, but it probably depends on how you're moving your wool around the needle.
Yes, I think that's the issue. Should I take it to the front first?
If you when you're knitting and you've got the wool at the front, yes, you want to do that, and then before you purl, you want to take your wool round the needle so it's ready to purl, and the same again when you go back to knitting. Yeah.
So I've knitted, it is at the front. I take it back through between them.
Yes.
Okay. And then I go.
That's it.
Right. So are we? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
We're going to be starting on to row 4.
Oh, good. I was thinking about my biscuit a lot.
Quite right. Very important sustenance.
So Swain just point out we should the design that you've designed for us is based on the Stane, which is a standing stone on North Ronaldsay that's ancient, and he's put a link to it. And what's a bit unusual is it's quite high. How do you think? How? I don't know, 4 meters. Anyone guess how high it is?
I can't remember exactly. I know that I don't think I put that on the top there.
So
I did put the little story about the folklore on the front of the
did
kit.
you?
Yeah.
Oh, let's
So
have a
it
look.
says that if a female giant found the stone on the beach, poked her finger through it and planted it in the ground.
Fantastic.
I think Swain should put the measurements
Has he put the dimensions on?
into the.
Oh, into the chat. Okay, so it's 13 feet high and 3 feet wide. And so you just asked, can you repeat what you just said there, Sam?
Yeah,
From the bit at the front.
I've put on the actual front of the kit here something that I found online about the island folklore, and it says that a female giant found the stone on the beach. She poked her finger through it to make the hole in it, and then planted it in the ground. So if anybody wanted to look that up, I'm sure they could probably find more information, but it was just something I found about the island folklore of the stone.
Yes.
I've never been yet because of
right.
But one of these days,
I'll
get to spend a bit more time here.
It's really quite close to the road. It'd be worth going to see. I mean, I've sort of heard like theories that maybe there's some astronomical use of it, and that perhaps on the summer solstice, maybe it aligns. I mean, I've seen a nice picture of that actually happening through the stone, but I've never managed to do it.
Yeah.
And
maybe, Sam, you would rather go and visit the stone rather than going to the Lighthouse Cafe.
Oh, I don't know about that.
No, that's not a fair choice. So the world's best pastries versus some bit of stone. Right. Are we doing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So row 4 is when we really start the dike pattern as well. So in that first 16 stitches there, we're going to knit 4 and then purl 4, and we're going to repeat that. So it's knit 4, purl 4 times 2. Okay.
Right. Is there a way to remember that knits at the back and purls at the front when we've forgotten this? There's no little rhyme or anything, is there?
The only thing that I kind of think in my head is when you're doing a knit stitch that you cross the needles and it looks like a K.
Got it. Yes. Yeah. That's good.
I mean, it's maybe not hugely helpful, but I mean, when you do it the other way, it kind of looks like a K too. But I think it looks to me like the needles are pointing more to the right, like a K looks.
Yeah.
So there's 4 knit stitches. And then there's 4 purl stitches. So you take your wool round the needle to the front again and purl. And then again, 4 knit. And the wool back round and 4 purl.
I don't know. I've no way to know if it looks right.
That is right. No. So now you need to take your wool to this side of the needle. That's it.
You could explain the curling.
Yeah, certainly. You're going from right to left.
When you say right to left, what is that?
Say that
As
again.
opposed to what? What's left to right? What do you,
When you're doing a
Right,
knit
that's left.
stitch, you're going left to right through the loop. When you're doing a puddle stitch, you're going right to left.
what's right? Oh, from the right side of the.
From the right
wall to
side is
left.
the loop to the
Okay,
left.
From the left to the right.
So
Yeah.
other way around.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So it's right to left.
Yeah.
And then what, sorry?
Then your wool's going round
Yeah,
your
over the
needle.
top.
That way around. And then you're taking your needle through that loop and taking the loop off. Yeah.
Yeah, so
This is a bit you find tricky.
yeah,
I would scoop that
just have everything
wool
way higher up.
all up into your hand like that.
Oh,
So
so
I
you have it all. You have it all
so I
bunched
have
up.
it there. And then it's always tricky when you're first starting off because you've got nothing here.
Yeah.
But I've just become aware that what I'm actually doing too, that there we go. I actually hold the knitting there between my
Okay, yeah.
thumbs.
Yeah.
Now it is something not everybody does. Everybody finds their own way of knitting.
Yeah.
But I do hold it, and it just makes it easier maybe to take off the needle.
That's one cross stitch, and then I've got the wall here. Do I need to do anything with it? Do I need to loop it, or is it?
You're doing 4 puddle stitches.
Does it stay on this side?
Yeah, stays on that side,
Yeah, that's the-
right to left, round the needle.
top one.
Yeah, around the top. No, is it? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Sorry.
It's getting tight again, I think. But I'm not really sure why that's happening.
It's just purely
But what is
how
it? What
much
is it that's
pressure that you're putting on your
this
wool.
string?
Yeah,
Okay, so just try to be loose.
just a little bit looser.
I think when it gets tight, then it's harder to move up and down the needle.
It
It's
is.
tighter.
It is, and it also makes your knitting twist round your needle, so then it's harder to see the loops.
Yeah. Mhm. It feels very tight right now. Oh no, that's good. Now it's like tight and hard to push this through. I'm not sure
Okay.
if there's a way to, like, this is like very tight on the needle.
That's just purely how tight you're knitting your stitches.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you know what some people do, and you might find this easier, is when they take the wool over, they actually drop it.
Okay. See, now it's really tight, and I don't really understand why. Like, it's tight to the. I don't know how it's done that.
Because you're trying to knit the same stitch twice.
Oh.
Right, okay, so. Where are we? 1, 2. Yeah. I wondered if you did that, if that, you might find it difficult to leave the loop on, I don't know. But that's not bad.
Yeah, she fixed it. But, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so now you've done 4 plain and 4 puddle, 4 knits and 4 puddles.
Yeah.
So you're going back to do another 4 knit.
The knit has to be.
So the knit, the wool comes round to the right hand side of the
just
needle.
straight like that,
Yeah,
and then just do 4.
and you do 4 knits.
I think maybe when I'm pulling it up like this, that's tightening.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to like get away that it's not happening. I just need
Right.
to have this. I think it should have this more up. So actually, that one worked better. This is 3 nets. Is that right? Can you tell?
Yes, that's quite impressive that you can see that. No, but I'm not being funny, that is. The bumps are on the right side.
More luck. So that worked better. I think maybe it's just this. This is the hardest part for me.
Yeah, so
That
I
one, that's
I
tight,
think
that's
that
where
you
I'm
would
tightening.
find it easier, as I was saying, if you actually hold on to the knit in there.
Mhm.
When you're,
Yeah.
you know, if you've
Okay.
got all your wool, if everybody can see this, if you've got all your stitches, depends on how much you're knitting with. But here, if you're having that same problem,
Yeah.
is to hold it here so that when you're knitting and you take it off, you can actually let go of the yarn if you're worried about it being too tight.
Mm.
And it will make it looser, but if
Right.
that's a problem that you're having. So then you've done 4 knit, 4 purl and 4 knit.
Yep.
You've got 4 purls left to do. So again, you have to take your wool from the right side round to the left of the needle.
That way.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's it.
okay. It feels. I don't know how I do this. It's like feels tight again.
Maybe try, if you got your stitch here, instead of moving this needle, move that needle.
Just move this one.
No, the other one.
Is that?
Yeah, so if you're holding your knit in there,
Yeah.
if you put your needle in and you're wrapping your stitch round,
Yeah.
instead of moving this, you're trying to move this needle out,
Yeah.
try and pull the left-hand needle over so that the stitch can go through the loop.
Mm. Okay.
See what I mean?
Yeah. This is really tight.
You see?
Mm.
You're trying to knit the same stitch again.
I don't know. What am I doing? Why is that happening?
I think it's just because you're not removing it from the needle properly.
Right.
So in there,
Yeah.
round, and instead of moving this needle, move your left one, pull it up.
Yeah.
And then off.
Okay.
And then you're definitely going to get a looser stitch then. Sorry. Bang on the tripod.
I think anyone listening to this is going to hear there's quite a few accents going on, but the only real Orcadian accent is yours, Sam.
And it's probably a real mixture.
Because where have you lived?
Well, my mother was Arcadian. My father was from Devon.
Oh,
And they met up here.
yeah.
So we were born and brought up here. But then I had 2 years in Edinburgh and a year in Linlithgow. And then I came home for 2 years. And then I was a year and a half in London. And because Dad was from Devon,
Yes.
he spent his whole life telling us that we had to speak properly because nobody would understand us. So I think I have a bizarre situation now where my husband, who was actually born in Aberdeen, sounds more Arcadian than I do.
Oh,
because he's been here for so long.
yeah.
I don't know what's happened here.
Okay.
I just don't know what keeps happening. But you keep fixing and then like immediately make a mistake.
Right. All that's happened there is you've not taken it off the needle properly.
Right.
But it's good because I wouldn't think to explain to somebody
Yeah.
about that because
Yeah.
so
Mhm. You say like use this needle, but like there doesn't seem to be like
Right.
a way.
Okay.
I'm not really sure.
Purl stitches are not easy.
Yeah.
For some reason, knit stitches just make more sense. Right.
So I think you're doing something here where you're loosening it up. You're just kind of pulling it away like that, and then you have all this space, which I don't.
Yeah.
Feel like I have.
So
Yeah. Okay.
don't move this needle, because
Yeah.
what you're doing is you're trying to do it like this, and then it gets more complicated. You can try and keep them further apart and hold your knitting there. You can actually pull your left hand needle away and over and take the stitch off.
Yeah. You make it look so easy.
I know it's not easy. And I don't know, I'm so used with having one needle under my arm when I knit that if I try and do it without having a needle under my arm, then I can do it, but it doesn't feel natural to me. And it is just finding what you find natural. So that's you done your 4 purls. So then your stitch marker goes on that needle. Okay. And you take your wool. What are we doing next? We're doing 2 knits. So you take your wool back round to the right hand side of your needle.
Just make this really tight again. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, your wool round to the right hand side. That's it. Okay. And 2 knit stitches.
Getting this in.
Do you know what? And I'm because it's like learning to drive. Until you actually, practice it and get it right, it just takes a bit of time to think about, because you're doing more than one thing.
Yeah.
What you might find easier is just to knit. And not try and knit the pattern, but just do knit stitches until you're really comfortable with how a knit stitch works and you're comfortable knitting.
Yeah. I do kind of want to do the pattern.
Yeah, but then once you've got the knitting, then you concentrate on doing the purl until you've got the purl stitches the way you want to do it. And then the pattern wouldn't be difficult for you at all. It's up to you.
And you could have the pattern appearing further up the scarf.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm doing something that isn't. Then it's like I'm trying to make up my own thing.
Well, that's okay.
Which I don't know if that'd be helpful for me to try to have to do that. I don't know, is this 3 knit stitches I've just done?
It's that one is.
Imagine if I was sitting over there, I don't know what would happen.
Right. What you're having a problem with here is releasing the stitch from this needle.
Yeah.
So that's a couple of times you've tried to knit into the same stitch. That's all it is. So we're going from our 2 knits to a purl now again, if you're wanting to stick with the pattern. Yeah. So it's just remembering when you've done that, that you're pulling this away rather than pulling this needle out. And then you have to take that off, because what you're trying to do at the moment is you're then trying to knit back into here, and that's when it's getting tight. Okay. So we're on row 4. So, and we are that's where your stitch marker is.
Yeah.
So we've done the knit 4, knit puddle twice.
Mhm.
We've done knit 2, and now we're on to puddle 8.
Can you just do one more fast?
Mhm.
Or not, sorry, not fast. Slow.
In there,
Yeah.
round there.
Yeah.
Pull this one up so that your needle comes
Yes.
right through that hoop,
Yeah, I think I'm.
takes it off.
Yeah, I think I'm doing something funny.
Yeah, I think it's because
No.
when you're doing it, you're trying to do it like this, almost,
Mm.
and then you're not necessarily seeing what that needle's doing.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
How about that? So we've got a puddle 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. It's all gone very quiet. Everybody's concentrating.
I went really wrong, and I ended up with the wool wrapped. I was knitting, and I looked down, and I had the wool wrapped underneath and
Oh.
round it to go back and unpick a load.
Okay, I think
Yeah.
I might have been doing something wrong.
No, you
Like,
got that right.
fundamentally wrong. So now I feel like
You've got it.
it's a bit better, yeah. Hopefully by the end of it, I've got this down.
That's the bit that you're
That's what I
going
was
wrong.
doing. That's what I was doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's all. And you just pull it off.
you just know that needs to go through there.
Okay, yeah. See, I did that last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's as simple as you're transferring a loop from your left hand needle to your right hand needle by making a new loop.
Mhm, mhm.
But it's
Yeah, it's hard to like.
it's just not straightforward as what
Yeah.
that sounds.
Yeah.
So you've got another couple to do
Oh,
of
I'll
pearls.
do it. Also,
You've done the 2 knit,
okay.
and then you've got 8 pearls to knit. So
8
you've
with
done
2 knit.
6. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's it.
And this is what the advantage of having a marker is, because you know
Yeah.
that you've got that 2 pearls, 2 knits to do before you get to your marker.
Yeah.
So through there.
Yeah.
I'm on to row 7 now. I'm just beginning to see what's happening with it now.
Yeah. If you've done knitting before, then you will, and you'll see,
Yeah.
you know, it's like you learn on the wall pattern where your next stitches pattern has to go to fit in with the pattern so that it looks like brickwork.
Yes. Yeah. I've never used markers before. I've never understood what these were about. So this is really useful. It is reassuring.
Yeah.
It's sort of confirming what you're doing with the counting.
And I mean, you
Yeah.
don't need them once you get past the Stane
That's
pattern,
right.
because then you're on to wall pattern all the time.
Yeah.
But it does just help break it up, and then you know, wait a minute, I need to have these 2
Yes.
rows of knit or puddle each
Yes.
side of it so that it's
Yes.
got a clean edge to the stone.
Yes.
I wish I just had like a step by step how to do, because I keep forgetting how to do the pearl. I've got like, I've done that, and I've got this round.
Yeah.
And then,
So then you've got 2 stitches still to go before your marker, have you? What have you got? 3. You've got this marker here.
oh, I see. Yeah.
3. So you've got 1 more puddle to go, and your wool's on the right side still for puddle.
Yeah.
And then you're going through there.
Oh, okay.
Then you've got your wool round to the right hand of your needle. So that's it. And then you've got 2 knit stitches.
Just like that, over the front.
That's it. That's it. Around there. And off.
Okay.
And then you just put your needle through your marker and flip it onto you. That's it. And it doesn't matter if you're using plastic or if you're using string or ribbon or whatever, it's the same thing. You just flip your marker onto the other needle. Now we're on to 4 purl and 4 knit. So it's 4 purl again. So you want your wool round towards you. That's it. And then you've got 4 purl stitches. And then no, other way. That's it. That's it. And then you go 4 knit. That's it. Yarn round.
You know the balls of wool. When you're buying the wool from the wool mill, is it in balls like this or is
No,
it
it's
skeins?
usually on hanks or skeins.
Hanks, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Are hanks and skeins, is that the same word?
absolutely.
Right.
Exactly the same.
And then do you have a machine that puts it onto?
Yes.
Oh right,
Yeah.
right.
They call them swifts,
Right.
basically, and you just clamp that to your table.
Yes.
And it's like an umbrella. It comes out.
Right, yeah.
And you undo your skein, just hang it on there, then cut the threads.
Yes.
And then I have a ball winder.
Right.
Because
Yes.
especially if you're knitting, I mean, you can knit straight off the skein, but it just probably getting a real mess.
So that's a good tip. If you buy a skein, turn it into a ball yourself, which you
Yeah.
can just do with your hands, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't
Yeah.
have to have a ball
Good.
winder, but I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't have a Swift, as I said, then you can just get 2 chairs
Oh
and
right.
put them back to back.
Yes. Yes.
Put your skein over, pull them
Yes.
apart so that it's tight,
Yes.
and you can wind a ball by
Oh, I
hand.
see.
It's
Maybe-
not a problem.
Made for posting, do you think it's better? Do they keep? Would the wool mill be providing in skeins because it's easier
Always.
to post? What do you
I think it's just because it's the way it comes off their
Right.
spinning
Yes,
loom. You know,
yeah.
it's easier for them
Yeah.
because it
yeah.
would be another process for them to put it into balls for
Right.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. See. Yeah.
So I mean, like you
Yeah.
always, well, not always, but nearly always, if you're buying commercially made wool, then you would get it in balls.
Right. Yeah.
But
yeah.
you know, it would be a lot of extra time for them to do it, which would add to the cost.
Yes.
You know, so
Suddenly it just feels tight again. I'm not sure if it's done something funny with this
Okay.
first knit stitch. I don't know.
Right. You okay there, Benji?
I finished all four fairly.
2, 3, 4, 1. There we go. You had just not taken it off properly.
Okay.
So that's you into your knit.
Not gonna get finished.
Well, we're not expecting
think-
to finish
yeah,
it
yeah.
today.
Not at all.
In fact, you could come along to craft group this afternoon and sit knitting if you wanted.
Yeah.
Because Sian's really good at knitting, so she can help us with this.
Okay.
And YouTube's full of videos.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I need to just watch like a slow mo of someone doing the knit and frost bit.
Well, what you can do when this is up is you can pause it,
Yeah,
you know, and then you can see it all.
yeah.
So, row 5. This is where I would certainly suggest that you mark your pattern. And some people mark when they've done a row, some people mark as they're starting a row. It's totally up to yourself. But row 5 on here is a repeat of row 3. I'm just going to mark it that I'm starting that so that my eye gets drawn to it straight away if I need to. And you'll be delighted with this because you've got a group of 16 knit stitches to start with.
I've now forgotten how to do knit stitch. It's just getting really tight and I don't know what I'm doing now.
Right, you've got your wool on the wrong side
Okay.
for a knit stitch.
Well,
What's happened there?
well,
You're still trying to knit into the stitch twice.
so what do you think? Where is that happening in the stitch?
Right,
What's
you're doing that and then you're twisting it and you're
And I'm
trying
going
to go
in.
back in again
okay, so
instead of taking it
I'll
actually
take
off.
it straight out. Okay.
So you're just going in there,
Yeah.
round there
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
off.
Okay. Yeah. I think I keep doing an extra loop in that.
Yeah. That is tightening it for you, definitely. Just going to wait a minute until you've done this row and then I'll start on the next one. Oh, okay.
You know how we're very keen on birds on this island? I'm looking, we've got a bird WhatsApp and it's saying there's a cuckoo on
Oh,
the
wow.
island.
Mhm.
So James, how often would we expect to get cuckoos?
I mean, we had a few in spring.
Yeah.
This is an early autumn migrant. Heading back.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly annually.
Yeah.
A few times each migration season.
Would you expect them to do the cuckoo noise?
You might get young ones doing the way
Yeah.
we've got that young quail.
Oh yeah.
Just like practicing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do it, but I think in the spring I think we have them calling.
Yeah.
And then you'll get young birds like practicing after they've left the nest.
I see.
We've got swallows nesting in our barn at the moment.
Oh, lovely.
It's quite sweet, but they're so fast. And they
Yes.
dive bomb us when we're coming in and out of the house.
But should it end with
There's
knit
4
and then-
puddles. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So it's okay.
Yeah, they got carried away. I thought I had quite a lot of knit stitches on 4. Yes.
You should have. Yeah. So now you've got
Yeah, should we end with
the 4 puddles now and then 4 knits. I think, isn't it? Yeah.
the right side coming towards it?
That's right. For puddle, yeah, you need the wool on top of the needle for puddle. So. There we go.
Yeah, but I think I was doing an extra step. I felt like it anyway.
That's it. Yeah. It is a little bit like tapping your head and rubbing your tummy, you know, it just takes a wee while until it clicks. And then you're just like, oh, is that all it is?
Yeah, I think it's easy when you can sort of see the pattern coming.
Yeah.
You know where you're doing.
And
everything.
once you can see what the right side of the work is, then you instinctively know if you're doing a knit or a purl stitch.
Yeah.
I'm starting to understand what
What the process actually
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's it. 'Cause if you can understand what
you're doing.
Yeah, then
Definitely.
if you're just kind of blindly following instructions and you don't really, you can't really work through issues.
It's always easier when you can see somebody too.
Yeah.
I must admit,
That last one came off.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Pop it back on that needle.
Just that loop.
Yeah,
Oh,
just-
oh yeah.
Let's just pop it.
Like that.
That's it. Mhm. Okay. Right. So then row 5 is a repeat of row 3. So if we look back to row 3, then you're knitting 16 stitches. So this is where your markers come in handy, because you know that that's markers at your 16 stitch. You can just knit straight to your marker. So that's knit 16 and purl 2 and knit 8. 1, 2, 3. Purl 2, back to the marker, and then knit another 16. You can see now, just show you here, we're starting to see the beginnings of the pattern emerging. Got the first part of the blocks here with the bumps. Now we've got the bumps here and the plain bit of the stone.
The wrong way. It creates next to. Look,
Yes, it does.
do I have to undo back to that point? Or can I just double stitch?
If you knit to that point on the next row, I'll show you how to correct it, so that you don't have to undo it all
So it's
and go
not
back.
quite doing two together.
You can, but then you'll have an error.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Oh, I could just
you
drop
basically
it and it would basically be.
yeah, that's probably what you're needing to do. So you can
Yeah, it does
turn
look like
around,
that.
knit the next stitch, and then when you get back there, you can see the bit that you need to drop off, and you can just do it, and then it's fine.
Gosh, I really had to concentrate hard for row 8 just then. There was a lot going on with that. Right, row 9.
Showing off Alex.
Woohoo! Well, I didn't know anything about cuckoos, though, did I? We all have our own areas of expertise.
The confusing thing probably about row 8 is because it's got the knit 6.
Yes.
So it takes you for the 2 stitches past your marker.
Yes.
But it's just a simpler
Yes.
way of writing the pattern than knitting 4 and then knitting 2.
Yes.
You're doing great.
Getting it a bit more now.
Yeah.
Certainly not.
And you're looser?
Yeah. I don't know. I think I've just worked out whatever problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Seems to resolve itself, which is good.
That's what learning a new skill is all about, really.
I'm too much of a perfectionist. But you can't expect it to be perfect the first time you do something.
No.
I guess with something like this, yeah, like you say, it's like can be quite forgiving.
Yeah,
like it's not gonna be perfect,
absolutely.
but-
Well, if you look at mine here, there's a huge loop there from a slug.
Yeah.
And that's why this pattern works really well in the North Ronaldsay wool, because the wool isn't absolutely perfectly spun. But that's fine.
Yeah.
It's still, at the end of the day, it's still going to make you a lovely warm scarf. And that's what you're wanting. Okay, so we were on that. So that is, then you've got puddle 2. So you've moved your mark around, so you turn your yarn, that's right. That's it.
Froze. Because whenever I switch between, I suddenly forget.
So it's going down through the stitch and off. And then the same again.
You're doing pellets coming towards you, and then you pull it around the back.
That's
And
right.
it's still coming towards you. That's just from the. Okay.
Maybe it might be easier to think of it when you're doing a purl stitch, you're creating a bump that faces you.
Okay.
And when you're going that way, the bump is facing away from you.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's how you manipulate the needle to take the stitch off.
Yeah, I think that does help.
Okay. So we're on row 6. And 2. I'm going to knit ahead on this row because I'm aware of the time and I want to show everybody how to do some of the other things that crop up later on in the pattern. 18. I'm going to quickly knit this row. 1, 2, 4, 7, 8. 2. Gosh. Need that on, but never mind. And gosh, I'm getting my needle caught up now.
Trick man.
Transference. Okie dokie. So how you doing? Where have you got to?
Done the 8 knits and I'm doing the 2 purls.
Okay. So you know what row you're on
Yeah.
and you're okay.
Yeah, I think I'm doing 2.
I'm going to jump ahead to row 15, purely just to show everybody how to do the hole in the Stane.
Do you think we should just carry on with the pattern and maybe catch this up on YouTube?
Yeah, I think that would be
So
easier.
us in the room will just stick with what we're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I just thought it would be easier to explain because then it is on the video and everybody they can knit up to that point and they
Yeah.
can jump in and catch up.
Yeah, because it's got that word K2 tog.
Yeah.
Yeah, explain what that is. Yes, okay.
So on row 15, we're going to knit 16. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Slip over our stitch marker. Then we're going purl 2. Now you can hardly see on here, but on the main scarf itself, row 15 is this row here that has the hole in the middle of the Stane. So we've just done these 2 purls now, and we are going to knit 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, we're creating a hole, but we don't want to have to increase a stitch in the next row. So we do what we call a yarn around the needle. So we want the yarn to be able to knit properly the next time round. So you go yarn around the needle, then the knit 2 knit together, you're basically knitting 2 stitches together. And we're doing this knitwise. So instead of knitting into the first stitch, you knit into the second stitch and the first stitch. So the loops of both those stitches are on your needle, and you knit and you take those 2 stitches off. And if you look, you've created a hole there. But when you come back to knit across, you knit this stitch as well. So you've got the same number of stitches on your needles as you had before. So then we knit 2 and we purl 2. And we knit 16 as the pattern. So row 16 is a repeat of row 8. So what I'm just going to do is I'm quickly going to fly across here so that I can show you how to do that knit 2 together again. Right. 2, 3. Obviously messed up, it doesn't matter. And right, and knit 2 and a puddle. So 1, 2, 3. Then you come to that yarn over and you knit that puddle wise. And you knit your 2. If I turn that round to the right side, you will see you've got your hole there. But because you've done the yarn over and you've knitted that, you've got the same number of stitches you had beforehand. Two, 3, 4. Okay. You can see the hole there. It's getting more obvious as you carry on knitting.
Just ask you a question
Certainly.
about that one.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what I've done.
Okay.
But I seem to have. I thought I did 2 purls now starting on the 16 next, but it looks like I've only got 17.
2, 6, 8, 10, 12. Right, okay.
So what has happened there?
So here, back at this first stitch here, you've got 2 stitches into the first stitch.
Mhm.
That's it. That was all it was. You'd knitted it twice into the 1 stitch.
Right.
So that's it sorted for you. It's okay.
Well, you say that I just did that, but I don't really know why. I think I'll have to maybe like draw the sheet later.
What you're doing is you're doing that, but then you're not taking the stitch
No,
off.
okay, that's what
So you're knitting back into it and giving yourself 2 stitches instead of 1.
Yeah, I guess it's just getting the fundamentals down. I think, yeah, it'd be good to be able to fix it. Go back and be able to redo it. And that's something I have to learn as well.
Yeah. But it all just takes time.
Yeah, I guess like if you have a marker here and you know you've done something wrong, you're not really sure what. You can just, if you know how to go back, you can just go back and just redo it.
Yeah. If you if I do a bit here, I will show you.
Okay.
Just because it's something that everybody else might want to know as well. I'm just knitting a few stitches here. Forget about the pattern for a minute. And I'll do something there. And then we're looking and we realise there's something wrong with that stitch. If you turn your needles back and pull your wool out to the right, you can actually see the loop that you last knitted, and you can just pop it onto your needle and pull the wool, and it'll just take it back.
Okay.
And it saves you having to worry about, I can just pull the needle out and run it back and pick up stitches. But if you don't actually know how to look for the stitch, this is the easiest way to do it. So your 2 stitches that I knitted there, if you just pull that out so it exposes the whole loop, you can put your needle in the loop and just pull, and then you know that you're back to the beginning again. You
So
can
like,
start.
for example, this purl stitch, I can see this Is it this here?
Yeah.
You pull into.
So just pull that and pull that yarn, and you've got your.
Yeah. What? Like that.
Yeah.
And that. Okay.
I think you've maybe gone a layer too far, but look. Yeah, that one's been pulled off of there. So no, that's fine. As long as I know what that's a knit stitch, so I can just pick that up for you. But yes, that's exactly the process. Is you can pull it, and you can see what the. Of course, you're at a point here where you've got a mark in the way too. But if you pull the wool out, you can see the loop. You can just pop your needle in and pull it off, and it undoes. Yeah.
Was that the last knit stitch you just?
That one, we're going into there, so that one is a purl stitch. Okay. So again, just to show again, if anybody didn't catch that the first time, we'll zoom across and do the creating of the hole in the Stane. So we're knitting 4 after we've done a purl after the marker. And you're putting your yarn around the needle, going into the second stitch there, through the first stitch, so you've got both on the needle, and knit it off. There we go. Then you can carry on in your pattern. Markers come undone. So that's the only thing that's a little bit tricky that you might not have done before in the pattern. The middle section of the scarf is all wall pattern, so you don't need your markers in that point unless you want to keep them. Sometimes it's handy to know where the first 4 stitches are. I know it sounds silly where you think you'd be able to see it, but just so that you know it is a repeating pattern of 4 stitches through the main body of the scarf. And then when you get to the other end, if you want to, you can carry on just doing the wall pattern and have the standstone at one end, or you can repeat it at the other end if you wish. So then when you get to the end of the scarf, then we need to cast off. So I need to knit one more row so that we've got that on the right side. Just do that quickly. Just so that I can show you how to cast off for anybody that's not done that before. Okay. Now, you knit 1 stitch
2 stitches, and then you put your needle into that first stitch and pull it over the top so that you're creating 2 stitches into one. And the next one you knit, and you take that first stitch over the top of the second one, and you just carry on like that right across the row until you've completely cast off your stitches. Now you don't want this to be too tight, so try and do it as loosely as you can. If you do it too tight, the one end of your scarf will pull right in and you'll end up with like a puckered bit at the bottom. You don't want that. So just do it as loosely as you can and pass that stitch over the top and right along until the end. And we'll see. Just carry on. I have known if people are very tight knitters, for them to go up a size of needle to do their cast off so that it's a bit looser. But that's totally up to yourself. You shouldn't need to do that.
Is that like a style? You say tight knitting.
Well, it's called tension. So everybody has a natural tension when they start to knit. You'll just find what you settle into. My natural tension is quite loose. So if I want to make a jumper fit, then I quite often have to knit on a narrower needle so that I'm making it to size. So if you were going to knit a jumper, like this is one reason I did this, is because it doesn't matter what your tension is, because the scarf's going to fit. But if you're knitting a jumper, you have to know that the number of rows that you knit and the number of stitches is going to make a size of jumper that fits you.
Right.
So for all garments, you have to knit what they call a tension square to start with. And you would normally knit that, and it would be, it'll usually say something like, you want 16 stitches and 24 rows to 4 inches.
Mm-hmm.
So you would knit it to start with the size of needles that the pattern says.
Mm-hmm.
Wet it, dry it, block it out, stretch it a little bit, block it. And then you would measure and see how close your tension is to that. But if you're knitting like 18 stitches to 4 inches, then you need to go up a needle size. And if you're knitting less, then you need to go down a needle size so that you get to the right tension. But normally when you start to knit, it's usually tight.
Okay.
Usually a bit tight.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
So when you get to your last stitch there that you cast off, just cut your bow and pull it through the loop. There we go. And that's your cast off edge. Now the one thing that we haven't spoken about is doing the tassels. So now once I've got my wool out of there, I'll show you how to make the tassels. What you need for these is you need 120 lengths, and it's on the instructions here, but roughly at 35 centimeters. What I would normally do, I forgot to take it with me today, is I would normally have a bit of cardboard, just because it's easier. And if you've got that cut to your 17 and a half or whatever it is, 35, half a 35, then you can just wrap your wool round. If I fold this bit of paper up and show you. We'll say this is half the measurement. Then you can take your wool and you can loosely wrap it round. And then when you cut one end of that, you know that you've got the right length for what you're needing. As I say, I silly forgot to do that today. So I'm just going to measure it. Again, this is not an exact science. You can always trim them down later. This is not the best tape measure either. 35. So there's one. You can do it this way as well. But you need 4 for each tassel. Now, there's not much of a scarf here, but we can still show you. If you've got a needle or a crochet hook, then you can use that. If you don't have any of those things, most people have a safety pin. And what you want to do is you want to find the center of your work, and you want to be at the top of that first bump and just push your crochet hook or your needle or your safety pin, whatever you're using, through the wool. Then you can feed your tassel in. Not making a very good job of this, not enough hands. Why is it this always works perfectly when you're not being filmed? Okay, straight through. And we want this to come up from the bottom because we want the loop up here. Just straighten out your loops. Make sure your lengths are roughly right.
So Benj
Pull the ends up
is just
through,
off to work now.
and you've got your tassel. Okay. It's up to you which way round. Some people like it this way round. Some people prefer to have the bump of the tassel at the front. I've done it this way round on the main scarf. So if that's the case, you're feeding it down from the top. I'll just show you another one. There we go. Bye. I must admit, I usually use a crochet hook, but if you don't have one, this is a good alternative. Down through there. Pull it through. And then you can pull the yarn through again. And there's your tassel at that end. It's totally up to you which way you like it. As I said, I know some people do it this way. I think I prefer it that way. There we go. And you carry on. And I think we have 15, I think. So if you've got one in the middle, one in between them, the end, and then you can fill in the gaps, and it just makes it slightly easier to figure out how many you want to do. Okay. The other thing that I did think is that on this pattern, weaving in ends can be difficult if you've not done a lot of sewing knitting before. So you can do the easy way, which is just tie the wool together if you need to join. And that's quite simply done. Sorry, I keep catching my wool on a bit of Velcro here. There we go. If you want to tie them together to join them, you can probably get away with that in this pattern. You can literally just tie them and knot them, if that's what you find easiest. And then you can trim down these ends if you want when you're finished. Or the other way to sew in ends, which I'll just show you, done a little bit here so that you can see. This is an elastic way to do it so that it's not actually going to pull on your fabric. And although I've done this in a different coloured wool, you can hardly see it at the front, but if you're doing it in the same colour of wool, then you definitely won't see that on the front. But what you're looking for on the back here is when you're looking at the bumps, you've got the ones that go across the top, I call hats, and the one that down below, they look like smiles. And it's just a way of seeing where the stitch lies. So what you want to do is you want to go up under a hat, and then you want to go slightly to your left into a smile. And all you're actually doing is following the stitch round in the back of the work. So then what you want to do is you want to go over the top of that hat and down into that smile. And then you want to go round this smile into this hat and back into that smile that you came out of. And if you can see there, again, round the top of that hat and back down into the stitch that you came out of. And basically what you're doing is you're following the stitch round in the knitting, but it means that it's elastic. And it means that you then, when you've done that a few times, you can just snip off these ends. And as you move that around, the fibres will all connect and your ends won't come undone. And as I say, if you're doing that in the same colour of wool, you won't see that on the right side of your work at all. As you can see there, you can hardly see it through. There's just one little bit there where it's showing. Okay. On this pattern, it's a little bit trickier because you don't have lots of bumps, but if you've got, just do a bit here. If you're needing to join ends at all, where are we? I would try, if possible, to make your joining near one of your wall blocks, just because it would be easier for you. And again, you're going up into the hat and into the smile slightly to your left. Following that hat round and down. You can actually see on here, because the pattern's a little bit looser, you can actually see the stitch behind that you're following. You can follow him round, and in there you can see that stitch coming up. So when you've done your sewing in of ends, you should actually have, will feel slightly thicker, but it's basically an invisible mend. Nope, can't see it at all, and can't see it on that side. What I would do when you've got two joins in knitting is, I'm just going to put a bit on here to show you, because otherwise you won't quite fully understand what I'm talking about. So here we go. There. Right, so we need to join. Just hold my wool across and start knitting again. And then on this side, when we come to knit across the top, next row, we're going to have a bit of a gap where we're joined. What I would do at this point is I would just take that. You don't need to do a full knot, but just like the first stage of tying a bow. And then that'll secure it and it'll stabilize your knitting while you're knitting up. And then when you come to sew in these ends, you've actually bridged the gap of the hole. And you can just carry on. And when you sew that in, nobody will ever know that you've joined the wool there. Okay. And have you got any more questions?
Oh,
Is there
yes,
anything
I
that you're
do.
thinking of?
Yeah, I'm on row. Sorry, it's repeating.
okay.
It's repeating something you've done already. I wasn't listening properly.
Okay.
On row 15, where it's making the hole.
Yeah.
So I've done up to the bit where it's saying yo.
Yeah.
What does
So
yo mean?
it's yarn over needle. If you look at the top of your pattern, it has the instructions there just to say.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yarn over
Yeah.
needle.
So what does that mean?
So basically, it's it just means instead of doing a stitch, you're taking your yarn and you're wrapping it around your needle once.
Okay, done that. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm actually on a purl row, so I'll make it a knit row, so just so that it's easier again to explain. So purl row. You got your yarn over the needle, and then for the knitting the two together, which decreases it by one stitch and gives you your hole.
Right.
You don't go into the first stitch to do a normal knit. You go into the second stitch,
right?
but you also pick up the first stitch. So you're putting your needle through both loops.
Both loops. So I've made a loop around it. I'm going back through that, round again, and then through. And I have a hole.
And have you still got your yarn on the needle? You need both. You need to wrap your yarn around the needle first.
Yeah.
And then you need to go in and knit those 2 stitches together.
Oh, did I put it around the wrong needle maybe? Do you put it around the needle?
That your right hand needle.
I put it around the wrong needle. So you put your yarn around that needle. Do you wrap it all the way around? So
right the way around. You do it. I'm getting confused now with my clockwise and my counterclockwise.
Right, so I bring the yarn between the needles towards me.
Right. You're normally knitting with your yarn to the right of your needle. Yeah.
Okay.
So just take your yarn.
Yeah.
Up, over, and round your needle, so it's back out to the right.
Yeah. Yes. Right? Okay.
Then you take your right hand needle.
Yes.
And you go into the second stitch and then into the first stitch as well.
So catching 2 stitches.
And
right?
and then knit those 2 together.
Okay.
And take off. And basically that yarn around the needle is giving you the stitch back that you've just decreased.
That I've just lost. Yes. Yeah. Oh yes, that's a better hole now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then when you come to knit across the stitch again, it does feel a little bit strange because it's just a yarn over.
Yeah.
But you just have to make sure that you go in and knit that accordingly, like a normal knit stitch.
Okay.
So that it gives you a proper hole.
Right, great. Great, got it. Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, have you? Okay.
I'll have a go. But I didn't know how to take it back.
Okay.
For sure. I guess you can maybe show me again.
Where are you?
So that's the back. That's back there, I think.
So if you want to take it back, you just go in there and pull off. So you're just going back a stitch, back a row.
I'm catching that.
Your knitting is so much looser than it was. Brilliant. No, but that's you just finding your tension.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to work out which place I'm.
Where do you think you?
Yeah, so basically what I did was, instead of doing 18 knits, I did 16 knits.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah.
So that's. I just wanted to go back to that.
Yeah, sure. So it's just it's in there. You're basically just going back down a row and picking the stitch.
Yeah.
There you go.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
We're not going to make our fortune knitting, are we, Jane? Threepence an hour.
And they'll be worth every penny. Have you got anything else you can think of, Alex, that I've?
No, it's good. I'll have to look online. You know, I'll rewind this to get the binding off and the tassels and things. Yeah, no, I can see that my edges, this is my tension thing, like the edges are skew-iffy a bit.
Yeah, but they will be because it's the nature of the pattern. Like, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about that.
I mean, if you look at my scarf, it's not.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. There are bubbles here.
Yes.
The only thing I would say in the kit as well, if you feel brave enough,
yes,
then I have put a sachet of soap as well.
I saw that. So what do you do with that?
Well, that's just for when you're finished.
Yeah.
You just empty that into warm water, not too hot at all.
Yeah.
Put your scarf in, let it settle.
Yeah.
You don't have to rinse that.
Right, and what's that doing?
It's just soap. It's just taking a little bit more of the oil out of the
Right,
scarf
right.
just makes it a little bit softer.
Yes. Yeah.
You can, because I've done it loads of times, once you've got your scarf wet, you
Mhm.
can spin it up to about 800 RPM in your washing machine.
Right.
It won't shrink it to do that.
Yeah.
But it's the things that shrink wool
Yeah.
is temperature and friction.
Okay.
So you don't want the water too hot that you're putting it in
Right.
to
And you
soak
don't
it
want
in.
to agitate.
And you don't want to agitate or
Right.
rub it, because
Yeah.
that's what felts it.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
But I do it the whole time, and I don't have a problem with it felting. I spin them in
Yeah.
the machine. And then when it's at that stage, you just stretch it out and dry it flat.
Yes. And that
If-
is that called blocking?
It is called
Right.
blocking.
Yeah.
If you have blocks to do that with, then that's great. If
Yeah.
you don't, for a scarf, it's not too important to have it absolutely flat.
Yeah.
And what you can do once it's dry as well, you can just take a damp cloth
Yeah.
and steam over it lightly. Don't press it.
Don't press it, right? That's
But
going to
just-
stop this curling in business that's
Yeah,
going on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you put the soap in the warm water and you put the scarf in, and then would you also recommend that you should spin it?
Well, it's just easier, because if you're taking that and it's soaking wet,
Yeah.
trying to squeeze enough water out of that is difficult. If you have a look online, what they'll tell you to do is they'll tell you to wrap it in a towel and roll it. But
Yeah.
I've tried doing that, and I found that I have so many towels that I then have to go and wash, that it's just easier. And I've done it hundreds of times, and
Yes.
it doesn't affect the
Yes.
wool at all. I mean, I
Yeah.
do it with my jumpers as well.
Yeah.
You can't wash them in the machine, but you can spin them.
So
Yeah.
you just put on spin cycle.
Yeah. As long as you've got a machine that'll do a spin cycle.
Yeah.
Most of them do separate ones,
Yeah.
so most of the machines will do that. And most machines will give you a choice of spin speeds. I think anything up to 1,000 is
Up
okay.
to that. Yeah. I'm just looking at the time, so I think we've got 1 more minute of broadcast left. So maybe it's the time to say thank you ever so much, Sam, for doing that.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
I've learned so much, actually. That was brilliant. Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you. And round of applause. Hooray! Yeah. So, do you want to say something, Rob? Or I
think you've said it
Thanks,
very
yeah.
nicely. I think it's just goodbye from the Sheep
Good.
Festival on North Ronaldsay.
Absolutely right. Okay. Take care,
Okay.
everyone.
And you. Bye-bye now.
Right. Bye.